keeps you spinning around.
And a lot of times they're all chill until he starts.
Yeah, it's like completely quiet, and then as soon as I start.
Dogs or the straight bullets.
Yeah, not too many stray bullets these days around here, but there was when I first moved in here. A couple. All right. All right, let's check this out. So long. Cool. Very nice. Where's the camera? I see bright lights in front of me. These bright lights of the stage I'll never get used to, this fame and fortune. Welcome to Live by the Socially Distant Firepit, number 38. And tonight's a special one. I mean, they're all special, but you know, it just feels more and more special as each one goes by. But we do have a special guest. Cristian Morales is joining us for the second installment of The Pendulum and the Human Condition. And this one is called Caste Conditioning. I have to read it, it's kind of complicated, or a long title. Caste Conditioning and the Responsibility of Self-Awareness. Sit with that for a minute. Let it boil in the brain bucket. And I'm going to play you a song. And it is Black History Month, so I will be playing some legendary tunes by African American artists throughout the decades, all month long. And this first one is The Charade by D'Angelo. Oh. Crawling through a systematic maze, and it pains to demise. Pain in our eyes, strain of drowning, wading to your lies. Degradation so loud you can hear the sound of our cries. Ooh. All the dreamers have gone to the side of the road in which we lay on. Inundated by media, virtual mind fucks in the stream. All we wanted was a chance to talk. Instead we only got outlined in chalk. Feet have bled 1,000,000 miles we've walked, feeling at the end of the day, the charade. Perpetrators beware, say a prayer if you dare for the believers, with the faith that a size of a seed enough to be redeemed. Ooh. Relegated to savages bound by the way of the deceivers. So anchors, be sure that you show we ain't no amateur. All we wanted was a chance to talk. Instead we only got outlined in chalk. Feet have bled 1,000,000 miles we walked, revealing at the end of the day, the charade. without the veil of our eyes, we will truly see, and we'll march on. And it really won't take too long. It really won't take us very long. Revealing at the end of the day the charade. Revealing at the end of the day the charade. And all we wanted was a chance to talk. Instead we only got outlined in chalk. All we wanted was a chance to talk. Revealing at the end of the day the charade. Revealing at the end of the day the charade. All we wanted was a Thank you very much. And that was, thank you guys. That was the mighty D'Angelo with the charade from 2014, which is literally, to me, has been like civil rights anthem for the last 7 years. And it's such a beautiful song, and I hope I did it justice to some extent. Cheers. So with that said, I have a guest, and we're gonna do the social distancing thing because we're gonna have to be working together anyways in the next couple of weeks. So we're gonna have to do this. It's the only 3 people I trust in this type of environment. We're gonna resituate.
Right on. Let's get this thing. Yeah, spot right here.
Bring this back. Good.
Yep.
All right.
Cool. Let's do this.
Good. Just remember to speak loud.
All right.
Loud and proud. Okay. Welcome.
Curtis.
What's up, dude?
Great to be here with you.
I know, it's amazing.
Hi to everyone who's watching. I'm Christian Morales.
Oh, there it is, yeah. Everyone, Christian Morales. We've got a lot of history, and we've got a lot to talk about tonight, too. So we should get to it. Mr. Roman, can we just make sure the audio checks, since we're kind of far from the mic here?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that's happening. So,
Try to project my voice louder than usual.
check 1, 2. How's that sounding?
Check. How is this? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
What's up?
No audio? Did it get cut off?
You're moving me.
No audio? Let's see. Can you speak a little bit, Christian?
Check. Can you hear me? Do we have audio? Hello.
There's audio. It's good. Okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
All right, thank you, Mr. Marion.
Try this again.
I'm glad we know a bunch of audio people. So, welcome.
Thank you for
Good to
having
see
me.
you, brother. Once again, welcome back.
Wow. Yes.
So, tonight we are going to be talking. It is the second installment of the pendulum and the. Is it coming through? Okay, the pendulum and the human condition, which is a discussion piece I started here about 3 weeks ago, and Erica Watson, Scribbles and Sage, was my split screen guest, and it was so good that bringing it back this time with my brother Cristian Morales.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So, before we get started here, I mean, this one, okay, so the title we came up with was Caste, Conditioning, and the Responsibility of Self-Awareness. For any of those of you that were on earlier when I said let it stew in your mind, I hope that now you're ready for this one. Some heavy shit. But it's good information, and we hope that you enjoy what we're talking about. It's really important. It involves all of us as a human society. And I want to take, my space here in this opportunity just to kind of bring this out to you and have you and be involved as much as well. And always, send us messages and let us know how we did, or if there's anything you want us to talk about and get out on a platform amongst our friends and social media peers, please do.
So this conversation is going to be centered around the book that we both have just read this year. It came out in 2020. It's called Caste, written by the great Isabel Wilkerson.
Right.
Pulitzer Prize winning for her first novel, or for her first book that she wrote, which was Warmth of the Sun.
Right. Amazing journalist from the New York Times.
Journalist from the New York Times. She came back 10 years later with this book called Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, which we feel is really kind of, the foundation of the conversations that should be had right now around race relations and our, just our relation to the political climate of today.
Social connection, yeah.
Yeah, social connection, and how this is integrated into everything that we know.
Absolutely, yeah. And I can't wait to get into that discussion. Before we do that,
Yes.
let's go to you a bit. Let's warm up the floor here. You
Right
know
on.
what I mean? Or warm up the ground, I should say.
Right on. What are we doing?
I want to ask you. So, we were normally going to do the split screen, and then we were like trying to figure out ways. But you don't have any social media.
I don't have social media.
So I want to ask you, what is the reasoning behind this?
Okay, I'm gonna give you a few answers. I'm gonna give you first of all, the superficial answer, which is very true. I'm from Southeast LA, man. You know this. Grew up in the 90s.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we didn't have cell phones. Nobody did, not until the 2000s.
Right.
And, the way you communicated with people was either by talking or by payphone or by landline. So I just didn't grow up.
When your pager goes off?
Yeah, the pager goes off.
I remember that.
And I don't know, there was always like an association. Once social media came around, of course, I'm a teenager, had MySpace and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
But, once communication became in your pocket with the cell phone.
Yeah.
I just never got an Instagram account. And, I feel like there's this LA thing about me that's like, it just doesn't allow me to. But
I'm right there with you, man. I understand. Yeah.
But now, weaving into the real answer, it's like, all right, so we have all of these senses of self, ones that we are aware of and ones that we're not aware of. So the sense of self that I'm, really trying to connect with on a personal level is like the inner self, the core of our existence, the non-physical, the being and deity that is within us. And then there's the conditioned self. There's the self that we interact with every day in the mirror, the voice in our head,
the ego self.
The ego self, and the self that taught us everything we know, from, our parents telling us what to think, society telling us what to think, cultures telling us how to. So that self is one that we interact with every single day. And so there's that, of course, and then that has a lot to do with, the projected self of social media. And I have nothing against social media. I think it's a fucking great tool for businesses and just people connecting, and it's incredible. So I definitely don't want to patronize anyone who has social media.
It's just kind of the way of the times, I suppose.
Yeah, of course. And you know, I had social media for a long time, but I just found myself being more at peace when I didn't engage with my social media, with cell phone,
Oh,
and
yes.
everything else as often. And I think that was my goal, is just to really be at peace and not to have the distortions of political opinions or things of that nature, and just wanting to
Or what
be,
is he or what is she doing right now?
What is-
Ah!
yeah. Or, you know, it's like, you know, when I did have like MySpace and
Fuck that
Facebook and all
shit.
that shit, it's like, you know, you would see who liked your photos. I found myself guilty of posting photos in order to get
Just
reactions.
to get reactions.
I got them all. I got all the reactions, the good and
Yeah,
bad
you're like,
ones.
where's the comments? Who thinks I'm cute?
But then there is that lingering conversation in your head after
Yeah.
that continues on, and I wanted to not engage with those conversations in my head, and allow more room for just the simplicity of life.
Right, it's like social media almost like created another shadow or like another veil of personality.
Yeah, it
it's
did.
like it's like not that we already have enough,
Yeah.
and then it adds another one, and it does. You're right, and it creates a lot of stress. And no, I'm with you 100%. And you know, I find myself being caught, and obviously doing this is YG Live, so
Yeah, we're doing it.
it has to
I'm
be
here.
done. So I do have to play the game in a sense, but
Yeah.
other than that, yeah, I do find myself trying to separate from it because it's just useless stress.
It really is. It is
At the end
added
of the
stress.
day, yeah, it doesn't need to be there.
I will acknowledge one last thing, that
Yeah.
I come from a very privileged position in which I have a lot of friends and family that love me, and you know,
Yes.
I can call anyone at any point if I need anything.
Yeah.
And you know, I have real life support. Therefore,
That is a blessing.
that's a blessing,
Yeah.
man. And I get, so it allows me to not have to engage with the other self.
Some people don't really have
Some
a
people
choice.
don't have that,
yeah,
yeah.
they don't have like the family and the connections that we've nurtured from living in one place for so long. And
Yeah.
and you're right, and that's all they have. Like all they have is that kind of virtual friendship kind of connectivity, which is it's hard to navigate. Like
Truly
I don't. It's really hard to navigate, and I don't, you know, knock anyone for doing it. It's tough. Let's move right along though. We got a lot to say. I wanted to dig back, and like you worked with social services for a bit.
Yeah,
And this
I
kind of is a
still do,
segue
yeah.
into the book cast, because you worked with a lot of low-income people. Shit, I've even called you for advice on stuff before, man, just to
course.
like see how to get by, and
Yeah.
you know, for what I could do for my kids and things like that. And
Right on.
you know, what I just wanted to ask you, like, what are the conditions of like poverty, and you know, versus or with government support that you've witnessed
I
in
mean,
working with social services?
you know, when we get down to how it relates to caste,
Yeah,
let's think about this. Like, you know, poverty has a lot to do with conditioning, you know, children from when they grow up, and they identify and internalize, you know, obviously the socioeconomic caste that
we
they're.
fall into our roles.
Yeah, we fall into our
essentially,
roles.
yeah.
And we know this, that, you know, a lot of cities, inner cities, parts of the suburb are obviously like not invested in. So we know this from like redlining,
Yeah.
and, you know, in history, in which like predominantly, you know, non-white communities didn't receive like loans for building small businesses.
Yeah.
You know, their water systems are just, you know, pretty
Forgotten.
polluted.
Yeah.
So all of those things, there's no support for the arts.
Yes.
You know, there's no way to cultivate like a healthy human being in the conditions of, you know, in some of those areas. And I work in the city of Compton.
Yeah.
Compton,
Right in
Long
the
Beach.
midst of the whole conspiracy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. And so what we see is, you know, people that are heavily overworked, undervalued, children that are identifying with this, you know, with poverty as, you know, just the baseline of their existence,
of where they think they're supposed to be.
of where they think they're supposed to be.
The conditioning, and that's
conditioning.
one of the main subjects of tonight. You
And
know,
then that ultimately will lead to, you know, human beings who are unhappy, and, you know, will lead to unhealthy conditions in the long term.
how do you feel like when you're working with these families and these people that are struggling because of these guidelines and because of, you know, all the rules set in place?
Mm-hmm.
How does that make you feel? Are you able to separate that when you're working that kind of work? Are you able to separate yourself emotionally from that, or is that something that, I mean, what does that do to you?
I mean, the thing is, our emotions, as much as we like to separate them or not, or compartmentalize them, me personally,
Yeah.
they're integrated into everything I do. So part of the emotion is to, yes, there's heartbreaking moments, of course, every day, but part of it is also having.
Check audio.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry. No, we just
Sorry, I
want
was just distracted there for a second.
Yeah, we're like
So, yeah.
we're running a sketchy operation here. We always have to check audio. Yeah.
Yeah, the big part of it is having compassion.
Yes.
Really having compassion and understanding that people right now are suffering, and I am the liaison between them and the much help that they need. So I will be there as the person who who's there to make sure that this gets done for them.
Right, and there is a separation. You need the compassion, and there is probably like you have to kind of cultivate your temple too, and draw your boundaries of not going head first emotionally into it, and knowing that you're only optimized if you're rested and you feel healthy yourself.
Of course.
And, that's very important. Let's get into this amazing book by Miss Wilkerson, Cast. I think this is the fastest I've ever. We sped read this in the last 2 weeks,
Right.
and it was such a great thing. I mean, it really encompassed my last 2 weeks. This whole book encompassed my life in the last 2 weeks.
Crazy, right?
It's just everything. I would just every day I'd wake up and this was it. Cast was my life for the last 14 days. So
Man.
It's an amazing book, and it's such a comprehensive account of a lot of the atrocities and the damage that it caused society, the caste system did. With it's essentially the basis of racism, exclusion in society, and all the hardships that encompass these issues.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
like-
And she did. I mean, she's a journalist. That's where she learned. That's her basis of writing. So you can imagine it's just so comprehensive. It literally covers some of the smallest stories.
The smallest stories.
To the biggest widespread ones that were in newspapers and in media and
This dates back to pre-America.
yes.
Pre-America, in which they the origins of how caste began and
The
how
three systems: India, Nazi Germany, and the good old U.S. of A.
the good old U.S. of A, and basically how the white folks or the dominant caste had the technology, the guns to overpower other folks who were much taller and stronger, and just kind of of course the menacing nature of this.
Right, and it's not even, at the end of the day, Miss Wilkerson even says it's not even a race thing. It's really it just happened to integrate into that way, but it was more or less just who had the power. It's like, okay, they got a whole, this group of wealthy Caucasian, people got into power, and then it just grew from there and created this system.
Because there was a caste pre-race in which,
in India,
certain Europeans as well were part of a lower caste, and she talks about Irish and
Right, and then the European caste, and then in India, you couldn't even tell the difference physically at first. Now you can. Now there is a darker, lighter concept, but where caste was evolved, it was literally just there was no physical differentiation. There's no physical differences between people. It is literally you were the Dalit, the lowest class, or the Brahmin, the highest class, and it had a lot to do just. The only way you could tell was by the way they would treat each other, essentially, which is so interesting.
Mannerisms.
I want to say a couple things, because I feel like this is such an important piece of literature, caste. There was a couple things I was a little thrown off by right off the bat.
Fair.
And then it came back around, and I was literally crying at the epilogue when I was reading it. So but there was a couple things. The first thing is there's an obviously hidden hardline support for Hillary Clinton. You know what I mean? And the thing is, she doesn't really mention anything about how she mentions how the Democratic Party kind of battles within each other or doesn't do the right things, but she didn't mention how they sabotaged and did an inside job, and how Hillary Clinton is part of that upper caste.
Yeah.
And I don't think she speaks if Hillary did this and that, but I think Hillary would have been bad for. I mean, I'll go even as far to say I think she would have been bad for the feminist movement, which is so important right now to bring balance to our society. And She didn't mention one thing about Bernie Sanders, man.
Yeah, of course.
I
And,
feel is like the poster child of fucking deconstructing caste. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There
I
was
would
not
agree with that.
one mention of his name and what he did, or what he was trying to do. So, that threw me off a little
It's
bit.
valid.
Yeah,
It's
that was
valid.
it. But she, we all have our opinions.
Yeah.
And if you have a
course.
piece of literature, you're going to be like, I'm going to interject that here and there.
Yeah, of course.
The other thing was, there's a blatant attack on Hinduism, obviously, when she's talking about the Indian caste. And that it's true. I mean, Hinduism was built on a hierarchy system. I mean, it came out promoting a hierarchy system to, like, control the people, right? But, and she's very harsh on it, but she doesn't mention that it's from the Vedic belief system, which is really all about compassion and helping each other. And there was no mention. It was just kind of an attack. Hinduism didn't even come into play until the 18th century. And I mean, the term Hindu is basically, it was just people on the other side of the Indus River. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, it wasn't even until, like, 3 centuries ago that came into place. But before that whole religion was based off of the Vedas, which is a beautiful religion that I've been studying recently, doing a lot of research on. So I just felt that, you have to be careful, especially having such an amazing piece of literature. You have to be very careful with what you say, because you don't
Right.
want to attack something and destroy its core values, because
Right. Especially with the reach of this book and
Yeah.
being a bestseller.
you don't want to put
Yeah.
the Veda system, which Hinduism is based off of, is a very, very humanistic, nurturing, and compassionate system of belief. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah, I mean it's valid.
Yeah, and moving right along. I have notes. I have to have notes. The problem, and she talks about how the problem is at the root, the control and power factor, not actual people or race. What we were just saying in the beginning. It's like, it really is a system that just all of a sudden, these aspects of what the color of your skin, or I mean, it could have been tall or short. It
Yeah.
could have been anything. It
Could
just
have been anything.
Yeah, and that's such an. It's not. She says it's not racism. It's caste system. Caste system is like really the root of the problem.
Truly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Elaborate on that. or-
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess how does this apply to our life and maybe in the kind of nuanced ways in which we see this playing out?
Yeah.
Like, we can look at Middle America, right? We can look at places like in the Midwest or in the South, where we see a lot of like poorer white folks.
Yeah.
Or just poorer folks of all races, and we see them having support for the Republican Party, people like Trump, and all these other characters, conspiracy theories, and things of that nature. And there is like a consensus where people look at these people as like a less educated, of
Yeah.
a lower caste. And then you can see a successful Latino or Black person in the media,
Yeah.
and people think that racism doesn't exist. So
Yeah.
it's really confusing if you don't understand, like, even trying to wrap your head around it is a nuanced conversation. But the thing is that there is a racial caste system that is
Yeah.
always in place, and it's always in place because in the eyes of the police, in the eyes of the authoritative caste, a Black person is always guilty.
Yeah. Well, I believe the system is made to be that way.
The system
it's
is
not
made
like
to be this way, and it's just like so there's that.
Yeah, we were talking about Biden and all that earlier on. We're just saying, this is just a way for everything to become invisible again.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, it's all about money and power at the end of the day. The system is not here to help us, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean,
if you
I'm-
haven't figured it out
I'm
already.
glad that we have this maniac out of the White House, but it's
Yeah.
not going to solve all the problems.
It's not. And
That's
we
why
don't...
we need to engage in local politics.
Absolutely, and I think that is the most important thing. Local politics. You can only you don't want to overextend yourself, but if we're all doing this on a local level, that's where the change really happens, and we've seen it. Like in recent times, I think it really starts there. You're
Yes.
right, just from the roots up.
So as Isabel Wilkerson explains in the
Yeah.
book, so there's the racial caste system
Yeah.
that is set in place in order to basically to have the baseline control and to separate people based on these, like, biological differences that we have here. But the ultimate caste system that we're really working with is the the economic caste system.
Absolutely, it's power and money.
Yes, is the economic caste system
Money
that
and power.
really rules, like, the flow of resources into people's hands.
Absolutely.
But once we have the veil of the racial caste system, it sets people against each other.
It's a
mainly
template.
Mainly the disenfranchised.
Absolutely.
Which is why you see violence in neighborhoods in South Los Angeles of brown and black folks and gangs and things like that.
Yeah.
It's really just this kind of.
I mean, imagine if
design system.
imagine if those neighborhoods had fucking private education and the tax money coming to them. I mean, that shit wouldn't exist.
It wouldn't.
At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're all the same.
Yeah.
We're all different but the same, and it literally is just how you get filed out into this society, and that's where the problems come. And speaking of, another problem is just not recognizing it. And she talked about Nazi Germany, about how, like, it's not a country. There's no way that it could be just a country of evil people.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like there was people that just sat on the sidelines. They just felt like the system worked it into where they wouldn't be affected. And so they thought they could just sit by, and then look what happened.
Yeah.
It's almost the same shit that's been going on here for centuries. It is. And then that we've seen come into the limelight in the last 4 years.
Yep.
It's this, like, we just sit by. It doesn't affect us. It's okay. We don't have to do anything about it. We don't have to mention it. And that is a disease in itself. And I think I'd like to say that I feel, it's amazing that people have woken up to it, and there has been awareness across all cultural backgrounds and skin tones. So it's not there yet 100%, but
we're all learning. It takes time.
It takes time, and it takes self-awareness.
Self-awareness,
and
for
that's
sure.
we'll get into this at the end of it. But I mean, we all like to believe we stand up for aggression, but not until we let go of our own fear. That is not possible.
Yeah.
And that is something. Shit, that's a whole nother fucking podcast right there. But that is a big thing, and caste is an invisible force within our social construct. It's doing its job by shutting down oppression and cultivating itself, and it does it just because it's so deeply rooted in our society that it just, and this is, I'm basically just copying Miss Wilkerson's words, but it just so deeply embedded that it really just operates on itself. It's just like a machine that just, with an endless supply of, well, not endless, hopefully, but it just has a lot of fuel, and the coals keep burning,
Yep.
Let's going back to the Caucasian thing, because this is an interesting thing, and this is straight from the book. The term Caucasian was coined by, I think, an archaeologist, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, and it was his favorite human skull found in the Caucasus Mountains in Syria.
Yeah.
So that term that has been used, for folks, for the white folks, is like, it doesn't even make any. It's funny that just goes to show you how twisted the whole system is.
Yeah, I mean, language has a lot to do with just
It's race is not real. It's suggestive. It's implanted.
Yeah.
I mean, if we didn't learn all this stuff, it's like we could all look at each other and just be like. I mean, it's like Ram Dass always talks about looking at a tree. Mm-hmm. He's like, you're in a forest of trees. You don't go look at a tree and be like, I don't like that tree. That one's fat. This one's branches are too skinny. Oh, that tree's too dark. You just go and you're like, wow, these are beautiful trees, right? Exactly. I mean, it's essentially the same ideal. It's like this shit is built and implanted into us. So.
It is woven into the fabric of our existence now.
Yeah, I mean, it's so let's talk. And there is that invisible caste aspect. We experienced that in Mexico when we were touring in Mexico back when we were in the big. Oh, we didn't get to say, but most of you know.
Yeah,
we're in a band together.
Yeah, many moons
But
ago.
we toured with the Bigs Vinols in Mexico, and we saw that firsthand.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen it here and everywhere that I've gone to major metropolitan cities. But we have direct examples from when we witnessed
within its own culture.
Yeah, caste in Mexico. What were some examples that, I mean, we were talking about, like, we would weave in and out of different social classes all the time. So we were, hanging out in
And when you bring those people together, you can see there was an eyewitness, and I don't want to name any names, but there was an expectations of other people not to speak at certain times or just not to have an opinion. And it was so obvious because it was like these people, these friends were from like lower income neighborhoods, and these ones were from higher, and you could see how the inner workings,
the hierarchies, the economic hierarchies in people, and how that conditions them to
and it wasn't always skin tone.
No, it definitely wasn't always skin tone. But okay, so when we were in
Keep talking, I'm gonna throw a log in.
Of course, when we were hanging out in areas that were more I don't know, economically compatible to where we were. so, things were obviously much freer. Conversations were easier. People were much more open and deeper.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some of the best conversations with a lot of folks. But when we would, navigate and weave ourselves into the upper echelons of Mexico City, in which we would go into like these fucking mansions with like presidents' portraits
on the fucking wall, man. I remember that.
Jesus Christ.
I forgot about that, man.
Every drug that you want on the table, like candy.
Oh my God, man. It's so crazy.
Man, and it was like, okay, I don't know, just the mannerisms, the language. We were kind of, to some degree, like these weird guests of honor, like
the foreigner,
like a circus act almost.
We are a circus act.
Yeah, which is what. But it was
we
fine.
still are, man.
We still are. But it felt like we were the entertainment.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like, we were rolling with some people that were really from town, and I could tell that was a little uncomfortable to some of these other folks. But yeah, those are the interactions that we saw.
It's crazy, man. Yeah, we did experience it. I know we're kind of running out of time, but I just wanted to go over a couple of things. God, this is a long one, but you guys gotta I'm just gonna briefly cover this. There's the 8 pillars of caste that Miss Wilkerson describes: divine will, heritability, endogamy, like no mixing of races, purity and pollution, occupational hierarchy, dehumanization and stigma, which is like creates group thinking, and you know what I mean. And that's like, you can look back to like the Jewish persecution in Nazi Germany, where they shaved their heads, gave them uniforms, so they didn't have compassion because they just seemed like one unit of people. They all looked the same, and kind of took the individuality out of them. There's terror and cruelty. That's law enforcement, obviously. Like what we're going through here in the U.S.
Of course.
Everywhere. Inherent superiority, and that's... I urge you to look that up yourself. I mean, read this book, but if not, just even look up the 8 pillars of caste. It's crazy. Other things I didn't know, but the typhoid vaccine in gynecology was founded by experimentation on slaves. Yes. I have to say, I did not know that until I read this book.
Yeah, I mean,
that's fucking insane.
How we were mentioning earlier, like the Tuskegee Institute.
Oh, the Tuskegee, yep.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of black bodies were used for medical experimentation. So a lot of the advances and what we know about in surgery, I mean, they used black bodies and native bodies as experiments.
It's fucking crazy. I mean, and it's the list is never ending. And speaking of like law enforcement, as we were just saying, like there's also a statistic, I believe it was from 2018, or I don't remember, but police that get charged with crimes, I guess the only ones that got charged they're all from the non-dominant class. Mm-hmm. There was a Chinese officer, a Japanese officer, a black, and a Muslim officer. Like those, the white officers never get charged with the crimes. They literally, I mean, the system, it just goes to show the system is designed for that purpose, to not, to literally, the lower caste, just give them the big boot.
I mean, the book really does give us perspective on, how we interact in life these days.
Right.
And it's definitely a must read.
It is a must read. And, the thing is, she goes and talks about, there's this great article about, or a great chapter about how the caste causes bad health in all of us. It causes stress.
Truly.
For both sides, and especially like obviously the lower caste and then even the upper caste that are in the lower income bracket. Mm-hmm. Because you feel this falling out, this separation, and that's the main thing I want to say. Separation. That's really what causes the problems, and that feeling of separation. that just, we have to learn to let go of those fears, and I'll just say in her in the epilogue of this book, it was beautiful. Like I literally was in tears.
Yeah.
And it's great because out of all, even any things that I was questioning that she had mentioned about Hillary Clinton or the Hindu thing, and she really came back and said and gave this beautiful. She gives all these stories about her own experiences. Some of them are harrowing, but she has this great one about a plumber who showed up to her house who was just not having it. Obviously, very Caucasian guy. He was wasted, just not a happy dude. And she brought up something about her mother just to kind of test the waters, and he had mentioned his mother died, and all of a sudden there was this human connection between the two, which was just beautiful. And all of a sudden he just wanted to help her out. He just, after like kind of ignoring her and making her lift the boxes and sweep the floor, and he was just sitting there watching her. And she mentions that it really comes down to compassion. It does. Yeah. And we have to remember that caste really kills all of us at the end of the day. And she also mentions, and if we're the ones of us that make it to old age, we all fall into that lower caste system.
Yeah.
Because we live in a culture that just glorifies youth, and so when you hit old age, guess what? You automatically fall into a lower caste system, and you deal with it. And
deal with those short social security checks.
Yeah.
Unless you're like a billionaire.
That's and that's at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. We need to eradicate this, and let's wrap it up here. It's been we could go on and on forever,
for days.
Let's just wrap it up, and we'll just end it by saying, we didn't really touch the spirituality aspect, but I think we can sum it up really briefly, because what it comes down to is self-awareness. It does. If you're aware of yourself, why you react the way you do, why you have the emotions that you do, where do they come from? When you're able to silence your mind and your ego and you look within yourself, you can make real change that way. You know what I mean? You don't have to be out there on the streets throwing Molotov cocktails and flipping off cops and, saying fuck you this, fuck you that. You really just like look within, because once you change yourself, once you get rid of those things that create the aversion, that create the hostility in the first place, then I feel like you can really intuitively make the right moves.
Right.
Because you're not living off of that fear. You're not living off of that anger.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden your intuition is just as pure as fucking gold. And that is so important. And I want to elaborate on this so much, but
yeah,
we'll have to do it some other time. But
if I could just add one final thought.
I want you to do the final thought. Yeah.
I would say, yes, obviously, like if you're on the spiritual journey into knowing the inner self, I would say that once you reach the point in which you have forgiven yourself or forgiven others, and you truly love yourself, then you have a capacity to love any other human who has, feelings, any other human who experiences emotions, and that should be the anchor and the source for moving forward in a compassionate way.
I don't even have anything to say after that. I'm just going to say that I'm glad that you and I are on this path together now, you know what I mean?
For sure.
And
what I want to say is, I love you, man.
I love you. Yeah, and this is it. Love you, Roman.
Chris Roman, you are loved.
Thank you for joining us. We have so much more to talk about. Maybe we'll do like an extended version. We'll have to do a part 2. I hope that you enjoyed, and then please, if you do get a chance, pick up Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. It's an amazing book, and it's something that, as an American, like, we all should be informed about everything she talks about and everything she says in this book of hers, which is just an amazing piece of work. And please pick it up. I'll leave some links, actually, on when I post this, so you can buy the book. It won't be an Amazon link. But
direct website.
Yes, thank you for joining us. This was live by the Socially Distant Firepit, number 38, and The Pendulum and the Human Condition, installment number 2 with Christian Morales.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for everyone who stuck
thank
around.
you for joining us. We're gonna sit by the fire, or we're just gonna try to get the fire going. And I hope you enjoyed the D'Angelo song. This is Black History Month, so I will be honoring that throughout the whole month. So see you next Saturday. Good night, everyone.
Cheers.
keeps you spinning